if the leaves are falling on it consistently, sometimes I think that's better. That will make him come back and want to keep that scrape more open.
Do you ever feel like you find scrapes that are almost visual based?
Oh,
Like they're in an area that deer can see from a ways away?
100%. Like even when I make a mock scrape, it's always like, it's not so much where are deer traveling. I'm trying to put it right in their nose, although that can work. Don't get me wrong. A lot of people have success literally plopping a mock scrape right on a trail. But I think the best is, especially, you know, you'll have like a thick portion of woods and then it comes to a more open area. And then sometimes you just need that right tree too. Like I would say one of the most attractive ones here, and maybe not the most heavily used, but would be like what they call a witch hazel. I don't know if you have those, but they're like similar to what they call like an umbrella tree. And they don't, usually witch hazels are a little more isolated. If you see one, it sticks out like a sore thumb. You throw a witch hazel on the edge of an opening, especially for a mock scrape, they're running to it. Even if you didn't even make a mock scrape and somehow you planted that witch hazel with all these lower hanging branches, they're going to come right to it. Like they want, and that's what I meant about like when the leaves are falling on scrapes and they want to keep them pot out. They want, it's similar to a rub. It's not that they're just putting scent on it. They're trying to expose it. They're trying to say, hey, look, here I've been ripping it up. A lot of times too, you'll even find a rub on the tree that your scrape is on as well. So the visual to me is just as important as how the deer are finding it with their nose or traveling through. Like they're almost similar to a signpost.
So the way you were talking about witch hazel, which we don't have those down south, but that umbrella effect from the limbs and the overhanging limbs.
Yep.
We have a lot of big beech trees.
Yeah.
And they have those, you know, branches that are 4.5 to 5.5 foot off the ground. They go all the way around it. It's really visual based.
Yeah.
Do you feel like, especially when it comes to mock scrape or just any kind of scrape, talk more of a visual based scrape where deer can see it from a distance and it attracts them based off how it looks, and then of course, you know, scent checking it. Do you think having the right structure of licking branches plays a factor, or is it more the visual of the ground?
The licking branch is even more, especially how you hang that branch, like the vertical. Some people, I will say, some people don't believe in like hanging a rope or a vertical branch. They think just the overhanging limb, as long as the deer can access it with their preorbital glands and scrape the ground underneath, works. But I'm telling you, I've seen it with my own eyes. I've been hunted scrapes that, especially if you have either, and typically here it would be beech. I heard you say that you guys have beech down your way. Well, why I love, like, for me, my favorite type of licking branch is a beech limb. The only reason why is because I can cut that beech limb and it will hold its leaves for sometimes up to a year. And when you have just a plain branch hanging down and you look at it from 50 yards out, you don't even see it. When you have leaves on that branch, all of a sudden it sticks out like a sore thumb. And the vertical branch, a deer knows that, okay, that branch doesn't grow vertically. That took another deer to go up there and work that and break it enough to where it hangs down. Do I think they do it on purpose to where like they break it vertically so every other deer can see it? I don't know about that, but they just know that that's a scrape. They see a vertical branch, that's not normal. So the more leaf, the more visual, the further that the deer can see that, the way more activity you're going to have, for sure.
Now, that goes into making mock scrapes.
Yep.
Do you make mock scrapes? How often? Where? Like, what's your thoughts on mock scrapes?
I'll make mock scrapes year round, but I still think the early spring is the best time to make mock scrapes. I believe that right after winter breaks, there's a lot of movement as far as deer relocating. Winter time, especially up in this area, is generally a time when most of your bucks are holding tight to smaller areas because they're conserving energy. So once the spring breaks, it's almost as if they have like a surge in them to be like, I want to just cover some ground. I've been cooped up all winter, similar to how one of us might feel that, it up here, sometimes it'll snow for days. You stay in the house and all of a sudden you get that break in the weather and you just want to get out and about. And I think the early spring is best because bucks are starting to roam around. Honestly, they're checking scrapes then. There's such a great amount of movement then that you want to catch those bucks early before they relocate into their summer areas. Because then, once again, summer is similar to winter where they kind of lock back up to an area. So there is a lot of movement from early spring, mid-spring, and then it dies off once you get closer to summer, where you're trying to capitalize that, because if a buck finds that scrape in the early spring, he may not show up to it all summer, but I'm telling you, it's amazing the amount of memory they have with scrapes. Someone will say, well, how do you know that, how do you even tell it's like a certain buck that came by with no antlers in the early spring, but then it was him, in the fall. And like, there's pictures I get of so many different deer that like I can literally tell like facial features, certain things on their body. And many times I've had a buck hit a scrape, say like in March, and that buck never came back till October. But he, not a doubt in my mind, he remembered that scrape was there. By putting that out so early and giving it, another fact is like, I don't care where that scrape is, the longer it is out, especially if it's a newly made scrape, the more time that scrape has to intercept new deer and other deer in that area, the more deer are going to get to know it. So like, you can't make them too early. But yet, if you're going to make mock scrapes, you also got to keep in mind, going into the next season that, okay, just because I made a mock scrape and some bucks hit it doesn't mean that's where I'm going to kill that deer either. Like, yeah, it works somewhat, but once again, that's going to depend on the habitat in the fall, where that deer beds, food. If it's in the rut, you're going to have to factor does. But sometimes if you can plan it all right, and that's why even right now I've been making a lot of mock scrapes, I'm starting to see the clues of where I need to be in the fall. So if I put those mock scrapes now and maybe catch some of these bucks going in there, especially on these little mini rut excursions, those scrapes can be really good in the fall.
Interesting. Okay. Yep. I guess the location of a mock scrape, what has to go through your mind to tell you like this is a spot I should put a mock scrape at if I'm not finding a scrape? Like what? Because like we talk about this in the podcast, you don't put a mock scrape where you want deer to be. Scrapes are always where deer are already at and where they're spending time and where they want to go. And I feel like that you have to have the same mindset when you're making a mock scrape. Like you're not making it in a I'm sure y'all have Walmarts up here, but you're not putting it in a Walmart parking lot and having deer attract to it. So it's got to be around deer. But like, what's going through your mind to put a mock scrape in a certain spot?
Honestly, especially right now, although a lot of my work has been done, or a lot of it is just historical, because I have so many stinking mock scrapes. I got mock scrapes that are probably 20 some years old. I kid you not. But if I'm making like a new scrape and I'm thinking like, well, where do I want to make this mock scrape? Once again, it's probably going to be based on me trying to predict the upcoming season. I'm usually always thinking for that next year. Now, sometimes my predictions are wrong, but it will still get some use to where maybe it didn't do all that well this coming season, but if I keep it going and certain features within Mother Nature take place maybe 2-3 years down the road, like, I guess my point is too, other than scrapes around bedding, I don't see the same consistency every year. Like especially in the rut, I have scrapes where one year is really good, next year not so much. Yeah, once again, always some activity, but they're a little more inconsistent. But going into each season, I'm trying to predict these precise locations. And I will say, not to brag, but so many times I have a spot kind of picked out, and it's amazing how many times there's already a scrape there. It really is.
So I want to ask you this, because this, I think, is a very important factor. How much does annual patterns play for you when it comes to scraping activity?
It would really just depend on the time of the year. I really pay close attention to early season activity, and that annual pattern is generally consistent, or the late season. I also find that like right after our gun season, bucks are very patternable because they've really locked down. They're spooked. They're worn out from the rut. Where if you can put all the pieces together, if you can have food fairly close, if you can have cover, if it's kind of back in away from any human activity, like you'll find consistencies and where those scrapes are in those areas are getting hit more consistently. But throughout the rut, man, once again, I don't see like annual patterns or it really changes from year to year.
Yeah.
But there's certain parts throughout the season that you could just say, man, every year, almost every year, I'm very confident that that's going to be a good location, or that scrape's going to be used based on the pattern that buck's in that time of year.
And going back to the first episode we did with you, when you say you're trying to predict what they're going to be doing and where they're at that year, that depends on water, mast crop, things of that nature. Can you just recap that really quick?
Yeah. I mean, you could have the best bedding area, or you could have, the greatest remote thicket out in the middle of nowhere, but you start to take away water, you start to take away natural browse, all those other outside factors, and that's not where a buck's going to want to be. He might have used that area for 3 years in a row, but bucks, especially mature bucks, maybe even all bucks, they have a very nomadic sense of when they need to relocate. They don't mind relocating if they have to. However, I just think that especially mature deer are always out there searching for the best of the best. Their survival is always their biggest priority, and when they can find the best food, the best cover, water, all in a certain area, that's when they're going to relocate. So it can definitely change from year to year.